everyone who's joined us, is all about one of the world's favourite foods, bread. And asking why does sourdough feel so much better for our stomachs than a loaf that we can buy from the supermarket shelf. So leading us through this is Sofia Gallo, an award-winning private chef, food writer, great taste judge and former MasterChef UK contestant. Sophia was born in southern Italy and is now based in Buckinghamshire, and she's passionate about authentic cooking, seasonal ingredients and the way that food brings people together. So her talk, Sourdough Fermentation and its impact on our gut microbiome, will reveal how the magic of slow fermentation transforms bread and supports a healthier gut. So please join me in welcoming Sofia Gallo.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me. Hello everyone, good afternoon.
Hello.
I will try and make this as interactive as possible, and I promise not to delve too much into flour because I may be probably become a little bit more geeky when I go into flours. But I thought that I would bring with me some examples of sourdough and also the tool culture that have been used for making sourdough. Probably if we take a step backwards and we may understand what sourdough is, the clue is in the name. So it's bread that tastes sour. And that gives the name to the bread that we're going to talk about. When I first started looking into it, it was at the beginning as a nostalgic way, because growing up in Italy, I do remember my nonna making bread and always opening the cupboard and taking something of this sort, which was some dried yeast or starter, and from these she would revive it, make it come back to life, and bake bread. And it's never looked picture perfect as you see the white loaves in the supermarket, but it tasted great. So 5 years ago, for my 40th, I decided not to buy a very expensive handbag, but started a starter, which didn't work well at start. And that's why when I teach how to bake sourdough bread, I always say don't give up. But it's by understanding the science behind it and the reasoning behind some processes that we did through research and through reading is then that the light bulb went, and for the last 2 years I haven't bought any supermarket bread. So I've been making my own starter and I've been making my own sourdough bread. There's going to be a way of tasting a little bit later, and because we are in autumn, because we are close to October, I decided I wanted to score one in the shape of a pumpkin, just because my daughter, my youngest, has always said, "Mum, can you make one?" And I said, "Okay, let's do this." And today was a very good opportunity to do so. Right, why is sourdough better for your gut microbiome? Well, to give you a very, how do I say, elementary example, it starts as a probiotic, but then becomes a prebiotic. Okay? So the sourdough culture, which is a starter, has some live bacteria that will feed naturally on yeast, and therefore it's a colony of very good bacteria for your gut. Now I'm gonna try and pass these around if we can, and I would like you to have a smell of it and tell me what is the first thing that you smell. So the one that is coming now is a dormant starter, which has been in the fridge.
It smells like, do you know what injera is?
Acid, it's like acidic.
It smells like that, the batter smells like
That's good, that means that it's not too acidic. So we've got...
I can't smell roses, I can't smell anything other than God.
I don't know what that smell is.
Is
Fermented, very strong. Very strong. Fermented, and that is the same that I had for the last 2 years, but also is brewery smell.
Oh, maybe more brewery. Yeah.
Brewery. So we know
It's yeast.
it's very strong. It depends on your sensitivity. It's like acid, yes.
It's not the normal smell I expected.
Normally, it's not as it doesn't smell of roses, that's for sure. But normally, things that they don't seem to be as good, they are very good fruits. It's not a horrible smell, not at all. And what if I told you that there are only 2 ingredients in that, which is flour and water, and that's it? Yes. There is no commercial yeast.
So what do you do with that?
I make this, which is the live culture. So if I top it on there, it's going to start dropping now. When I had the sign, that was this morning before coming here. So feed the bacteria have been feeding on protein and the sugar that naturally occurs in the flour, and therefore have created the all important live culture. If I pass this, and you will see, the smell is a little bit mellower, meaning that the starter has been fed. When you hear about feeding the starter and how it creates it, it's okay. So it's not as strong as the first one.
Is that got yeast at the top?
No yeast. This is just flour and water. Mellower. Yes. So if we consider that the first sourdough, like anything, happened by accident, 2000 BC in Egypt, it's said that some of the yeast jumped into bread that was there to ferment. And there has been a study in medicine in 2008, and some doctors have extracted DNA from 3 different sourdough loaves, and they all change because the ambient is completely different from where you bake it. Also, the bakers, the hands, my bacteria, my yeast is not the same than yours or anybody else in this audience at the moment. So the DNA of each sourdough will be completely different. And starting from that, then they had and obtained they obtained a loaf that kept there longer, they could keep it for longer. The longer they fermented, the longer it would taste sour as well, but also it won't mold. And for that reason, I bought you, for example, 2 loaves. One was made last week, and this one has stone ground white flour and some crunch flour, which is called malt inside malt flakes. And one that I made 2 weeks ago. There's no mold whatsoever, but you can smell the acidity, how it varies. You can have it around, so how it varies, but you can still eat both of them. Whereas when you buy supermarket bread, 2 days and it's gone. Yes. No, it all depends. So yeast, as we know, they also react to temperature. So it also depends on how you preserve it. So if you keep it in a bag like this, it doesn't go as hard. And that has literally been for 2 weeks. So the one that you see the seeds inside was last week. The bigger and longer piece, that was from 2 weeks. You can have a lot more notes of sourness because it's been kept for longer, but you can absolutely still eat it, definitely so.
Does it ever go mouldy?
The longest that I kept it a month before it got mouldy. But also when you buy sourdough from the supermarket, it's not real sourdough, so you have to be careful. And if you have an opportunity to follow the Real Bread campaign that they call, they do have some supermarket, even Jackson's now at the moment. It's not sourdough. They can mislead us with the labels. They say wheat fermented flour, but there are some additives in it. Nothing wrong with that. They have to create in bulk. And therefore they need to add some additives to it. But if you can buy local and from your bakeries, they normally would have just a culture of flour and flour and water. So when I was talking about prebiotics are in the ferment. So the flour and water together, you kept them fermented, and depending on the temperature, it may take between 6 hours to 12 hours to rise. So this one from the band was at 6:30 this morning, and probably is going to be doubling in size by the time I need to use it for when it's ready to bake. And the reasons why we don't have prebiotics anymore is because the heat will burn and they won't survive. So the good ingredients will not survive to the heat. But you will have probiotics from your bread, which will feed your microbiome and your gut health, so will improve your gut health. It's also been known, because it's a resistant starch, they will lower your glycemic index, so you won't have as many spikes of glucose in your glycemic index. And it's all coming from the fermentation that you have here. So an incredible and tasteful snack that you may have is sourdough bread and pickles, or sourdough bread and kimchi, for instance. So it's fermentation over fermentation with some cheese, and you're absolutely divided and delighted, and you've got a longer span before you eat your next meal. It is also important to know what are the flours that we're using. So if you can buy from regen farming, or if you can find unbleached flours, they're absolutely better for you. Nowadays, we all know that the less we process food, the better it is for you. And I think we've gone a little bit too far to step backwards a little bit and do a lot less to our food. And the doctor before was saying about children that grew up in McDonald's, they have a very narrow palate. Whereas if you open your child from a very young age and you get them used to eat what is in season and also what is available at the time, they will have a wider understanding of how farming as one industry or seasonality works, and it will be ultimately better for them. What started, like everyone in lockdown, has become a little bit of a passion of mine, because the studies, you know, when you go and you start studying, you go down that rabbit hole. So I started with wanting to do sourdough because of my nonna, but in essence, I then started to look in the science behind it, which is something that helped me understanding the processes, and it's because my husband has IBS. So my husband has IBS, my daughter has been recently diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and reading the studies whereby the gut is linked directly to our brain by an axis, I delved a lot more into it, and I must say that my husband's IBS symptoms have absolutely, if not disappeared, diminished a lot, because we have implemented the probiotics and the prebiotics with the kefir as well. So we've supported his flora in that sense. We're still working on our daughter. She's only 13, so I don't think it's going to take too much of these things just yet. But we're trying to support as much as possible.
Do you think it'll work for the autism?
I don't know yet. So I'm not medically trained to give that result just yet. There is a talk a little bit later in the week, I think, and it's somebody that's going to talk about the microbiome, which will influence directly on the autism and the ADHD. There's been a lot of debate. When I tried to understanding the reasons behind it, and it wasn't for a cure. It's very hard out there, because when you are a mother of a son or a daughter or a child that has some differences, just because society's told us that there are differences, we always try to make it easier for them. We go in protective mode, don't we? So we try and find things that may help them. But we're not really supported, because when I started inquiring, she was also preterm. And we know that by the NICE guideline, if children are born under 30 weeks gestation, they may have a little bit more of recurrent in autism or whatever. These are vulnerable to medically like that. But when I tried to reach to other parents with children that had a neurodivergency, it was just a wall of, oh, you're trying to find a cure, which it wasn't the case. It's for me an understanding whether scientifically there is something that is out there and is different. Not to cure them, because we love them the way they are, but it's just to see whether we can facilitate some of the symptoms they may understand. There is somebody, my mum told me that in Italy they are trialing a tablet that will affect your gut to then be responsive to your brain, but just to ease the symptoms of it. Because if you have fidgetness, stims, is anything to relax? I suppose a little bit like CBD when it first started, it was exactly the same. But then now it's very widely available, even in Boots if you wanted to. But if I can do something that is via food and is naturally done, I would be absolutely more than welcome to try and opt for those easier options rather than medication in the sense of it. So I'm going to, are there any questions in the meantime as we go along? You can ask as many questions as you want. Does anybody does sourdough at home? Do you bake sourdough at home? And
well, I didn't. I did it throughout COVID, and then I haven't really done it. As I say, the regular is quite hard. I should just slice it and freeze it, and it'll be fine. But it's just, I don't teach a lot of bread. But I'm interested in kefir. I actually got some of those starter.
so you're doing the stuff. It's exactly the same as feeding your starter, the kefir is, but you also need to find the right culture that works for you. So everyone is completely different. So my gut is not like anyone else's in the audience, and I think there are some tests that can be done to see what your flora is, what your microbiome is, and then adapt if it's a kefir or if it's any other support out there that will boost your microbiome in your organism. That's for sure. Let me see if I went through all of them, all of the notes that I had. I teach at cookery schools, and I teach at the Science of Sourdough. It's a 5-hour class, so we go from the process of making the starter throughout of baking it and eating it and see how it changes. So I thought that if I brought the live culture and you will see it bubbling in front of you, you will see that some people say starter, yeast, you can see that is alive and it's feeding off air in the moment. It's all about the slow fermentation. The slower, the better. So if you were making sourdough and you left, you can leave it up to 36 hours in the fridge. So depending how your taste buds also taste the sourness, the longer you leave it, the fermentation is longer, and then the sour notes will eventually become more prominent. But it's all about all that acetic acid and lactobacillus at the beginning of the fermentation. They marry together, they feed off the flour. The purer the better, because when you come in from the starter into the starter, that's more nutrition for you. It comes out in form of sourdough. And the CO2, because then combined they create a gas, and the gas translates then in the bubbles that you're going to be having into the crumb when you open into the crumb. Very easy to maintain, so if you're thinking about starting, I've also brought some dry here, because you can even dry it at home, or there is some that is already live and you can give it a go. But if you're feeling hungry, I'm going to cut into this loaf and I'm going to slice some cheese and gherkin so that you can have a taste to it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So that jar is just flour and water?
Yes.
So what percentage of each do you put in? So how much flour to how much water?
So There are two schools. So if we go from American school, they all have ratios, cups and ratios and percentages. Now, once you've done it for a little while, you know what you're looking for. So you know the consistency that you're looking for. You don't need to weigh anymore. Whereas at the beginning, when you're at the very first, I always say start with a little quantity. So 25 grams of flour and 25 grams of water. So the start this morning, it was 45 grams to begin with, taken from the dormant starter that you have in the fridge. And then I've added 45 grams of lukewarm water
So what is
and
the
then
dormant-
flour.
Sorry, what is the dormant starter? Is that flour and water?
Yes, it's always the same. So it's like, if you've heard of levain, they call it levain, they call it active starter. It's none other than starter that you've taken from your mother and you made another starter with it. But the American call it levain, we just would say is an active
So if
starter.
you were starting from a fresh, no
Yes.
starter, you do your flour and water.
Correct.
And how long do you leave that for?
On the 5th day, you're going to be able to use it.
And you only take a little bit of that and add it to the new one.
Correct. So you start with 25 grams of water and flour, and then you feed it exactly the same ratios throughout the 5th day, and you will start seeing some movements to it, some fermentation. Now, temperature is very important as well. So your kitchen may be cold. Yeasts thrive at 24 degrees. So if you wanted to do it during summertime or autumn, the results would be a lot quicker than doing it with this temperature, for instance. And if you're feeding your starter to a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning same quantities of flour and water, it may take a little bit longer in autumn than in summertime.
And you take that one that you've got for 5 days and you put a little bit of that and do a new one before you bake, or?
No, you don't do a new one. So I've only divided these so that you could see the one that was resting in the fridge.
Yeah.
So what the temperature does, as soon as the temperature goes down, your fermentation slows down, and you can keep the starter up to 2 weeks in the fridge. So, and it's not going to go off. For me and my naivety, when I first started, I thought there was some root on top, some water, and I said I killed the starter. So I chucked it away. Whereas after I started learning and studying more, all it was an indication that my starter was hungry. So it was asking for food. And you can feed it with flour and water, or if it finds it that is a little bit too acidic to the smell, just flour, so the alkaline will be prevalent on the acidic, on the acetic acid compound of the starter. But there is no yeast. So let's say the commercial yeast or the brewer's yeast, we call it lievito di birra in Italian. It was something that came about after the Industrial Revolution because we needed more quantities and we couldn't just wait for this to ferment overnight, for instance. But yes, this is just flour and water and nature doing its course.
So you say it likes 24 degrees. I have an air in front.
Yes.
Nice and cool. If I put it in there, I noticed it reacts very much more quickly.
Yes.
But is that a bad thing because it needs the time to actually ferment, or is it just the whole process and it just is quicker, but it's still as effective as the one that you might have just on your counter outside?
So it's still as effective when you are feeding your starter, whereas when you are making your loaf, my advice would be to let it ferment in the fridge overnight. Last night I left this on the counter outside because it was cold, and it rose to about 80%. And that's when I shaped it this morning. But the starter can be kept up to 36 degrees and you're fine. If you wanted to speed up the process, you can even use warm water. So somebody said once, if you probably use distilled water and if you use unbleached flour and a sterile flour, so you cook your flour, you bake your flour in a low oven for about 15 minutes to sterilize it, and you use in a sterilized container, you probably won't have a starter. You would have to wait months and months and months because you can't stop the air and the yeast floating and the bacteria floating going into it. But if you've got everything sterile, you won't have a starter. So, and that is an example of how it's not beneficial to your gut, because we are made of bacteria per se, and this is why it's beneficial, because becoming a prebiotic, it will feed you good bacteria of already present in our flora.
So once you've used that, you just make a new one?
I only feed this one, so I really keep a little bit, and when I refresh it, it's once a week, one day before I have to bake. I only add enough to give me to rise double, and then I use it into making the bread. So you don't have to split it, and you will never have any wastage, or people that call it discard. It's also an American term. You wouldn't have any discard and any wastage at all, because you will always have like 50 grams of mother. You can, for instance, if you wanted to have a rye starter, because I have a Ryan starter, and this is a Bianca, you can take some of the one that is already settled, and then you feed it with rye flour, so that you have a rye starter as well as a wheat starter. So you're very welcome. It's very fascinating knowing how flour and water really react to each other to give something that is very good for you and your gut. Are there any other questions? No? Would you like to taste? Yes?
Do you need any help, or do you need any help?
Should be fine for now.
Have you done questions?
Yes, we've been talking as we were presenting.
Okay. Sorry.
So this one has been made with the Churchill White and also the Cotswold Crunch. So you see all the malt seeds that are left there. Because using unbleached flours, but also antique grains and wholemeal, it's a lot better for you, because the grain is not as processed as white bleached flour. So all the nutrients that will come with the wheat, they will then transfer into the bread and the final product.
Sounds good.
Pardon?
Sounds good.
Sounds good, so that's good. How many days? Oh, they only started today, and then they're on for a week. Yes, so there are speakers, different speakers every day. Anybody with allergies? Can you all try? Are you okay with pickles as well? So we're going to have a slice of cheese. Cheddar or Gouda? Anyone? Either.
We're not fussy.
You know, fast.
Right, do you want me to do anything?
Yes, I'll prepare it and then maybe... we
Yeah,
can
I
pass
can
it
give
on.
out some samples.
Do you know that?
I'll have it without the pickle, please.
Without the pickle?
Two cold for pickle.
Oh, I love pickle. They're good too.
So we get 1 to come without pickle.
Okay, so just like that.
Yes, please.
This will be my lunch.
Is that you, Pat?
Oh, it's only a bite.
Oh, wow.
Here we go.
Sophia, the bread is delicious.
I'm pleased.
How much of the starter for a loaf do you use?
It depends how thick it is. So I go between 75 grams to 100 grams. And then when you use salt, always use things like Himalayan salt or Celtic salt, so natural salt rather than table salt, which have been, again, less processed but also harvested in a very natural way.
I thought you made such amazing
Your own bread.
Where is the best place to buy?
Independent small bakeries, and if you find something that they have the real bread logo, that means that they're being certified to be using just a starter rather than having a boost of commercial use.
I have ever seen an independent small bakery in England.
There's lots.
There's loads actually, even bread ahead. Bread ahead, it could be one.
Where did you live before?
Well, 10 years in France.
Girls probably, but I don't know if they use something in it because it's a lot of bread to produce.
I've never seen an independent small bakery.
Thank you.
Maybe they're more than
How many more? 1, 2, 3, 4.
There are so many.
Is it good? Delicious?
When you make it, would you make it?
Trouble is, if I make it, I eat it. I live on my own.
That's what I do.
You can freeze it. It freezes beautifully, and again, as I said, it lasts at least for 2 weeks without having any problems at all. And also, you can use it, some of the starter, if you're making pasta, you can use it in your pasta making. So you do sourdough pasta as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be active, so because the pasta doesn't need to rise, does it?
No.
So you can have some that is just come out of the fridge, and then you can add it to your mix.
Would you advocate stone ground flour as Sorry, would you advocate stone ground flour?
Yes, yes, absolutely so. Organic, wholemeal, stone ground flour, unbleached flour from regen farming, definitely so. They cost a little bit more, but I visited a farm and we've gone back to how regen used to be. You know, the rotational, and you use one piece of the product and then you let it rest and then you start again. That's how we used to farm. But again, because we want everything yesterday, to speed up the processes, we earth our environment, and I think we need to slow down just a little bit more.
We do because of the waste.
Oh, I hate waste. I absolutely hate it.
There's so much waste.
There's so much waste. But again, I was listening to the doctor before me, and he was talking about eating from snout to tail. We do that in Italy generally anyway, so for us it's quite normal. It's a way of living that is not common in this country, or probably more modernized countries per se. Nothing wrong with that, but I think we need to be a little bit more conscious and wary of how things really work. My grandparents, they used to have a farm, and we grew the pigs, unfortunately, or any other animal, ready for when we needed it, but there was never waste for anything. If I tell you, my nonna would boil the hen's feet, we would chew on that, so anything that was there, we would eat it. And the offal as well, now this is becoming back in vogue, but we've forgotten all the forgotten cuts of meat as well. And when I do supper clubs, what I try to do is use anything that is seasonal, but also educate people that you just don't go to Italy to eat pasta and pizza. There are a lot of other dishes that have been forgotten about, And I'm championing the traditional and the authentic Italian cuisine as much as possible.
Can you make sourdough with gluten-free?
You can. You absolutely
Oh, it's
can.
really lovely. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for stopping by.
Oh, thank you
Good.
so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You can do it with gluten-free flour. It just takes a little bit longer, but there are specified bakeries that just do gluten-free products. I haven't tried it yet, purely because I prepare the stuff for my kitchen. There's a lot of cross-contamination, and I'm very fond of celiac and gluten-free intolerances. I'm scared because allergies is not something that you can play with. They're not nice. So not something that I haven't ventured yet, but maybe a challenge for next time.
Can you make a sourdough but in a bread?
Not that I have. So we go back to what the doctor again before me talked about, the electric rice cooker. I think if we can do anything as naturally as possible and taking the time to do it, because bread doesn't have to be, I make bread because I need to eat it. No, you have to enjoy the process of making it. Anything that you make artisanal, you have to embrace it. If you make bread just because, then you would make a normal loaf of bread, you would use yeast. But with something like this that needs your care and attention, you can't really make it in a bread maker. You can, however, knead the dough in a standard mixer, so you can do that if you don't want to do it. But this is a type of bread, and I learned it from Richard Bertinet. You don't knead it, you let it ferment gently, and then you boost the tension by giving some stretch and folds or some coil folds just to build up the strength inside the dough. But you're not then kneading and bashing and letting the air out. No, absolutely not. And it's by learning his technique that I've improved mine, so I can pass it on during my classes as well. Yes. Oh, sorry.
You mentioned that you ran workshops or classes.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you
You
there.
mentioned that you run workshops or classes.
I do run workshops. I've got one coming up in London at Cucina Caldesi in November. So I'm going to be making sourdough with everyone, and again we're going to be talking through the yeast and the starter. We will have one loaf like this to have at lunch, and then everyone will leave with a loaf to bake for them to have at home. Yes.
You prepare it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a 5-hour hands-on class, and it's limited to a number of people because the process is long. It's about learning by repetition. So if there are a lot of them, you can't really take much in. Whereas if you are a maximum of 8, then you spend the time that everyone does their circle of actions, and then until the next person and the next person. So you see it 8 times instead of doing it once all together. So.
What do I find out about that?
So if you went to Cucina Caldesi, which is it's not far from here, there's a cookery school, and they have all the classes advertised. I can show you, if you have a phone or a pen, I can give you the name of the school. Yes. You were going to ask another question.
Excess bread like this. Can you store it in the fridge?
Yes. So room temperature is better stored. You can keep it before baking up to 36 hours in the fridge, and you can freeze it. It absolutely freezes very well, and you can toast it from frozen, but it's lovely eaten fresh. It's nice, isn't it? And it was only 400 grams of flour for this loaf, and then the final product is around 900 grams of the final product.
Say 100.
400 grams. No, not 100. 400 grams, yes. I can give you the recipe if you want to try. I've got it here, so if you want to take photos also on the workshop, yes, you can take the photo of it.
But Sophia, do you
Yes.
think that the weather can influence
Yes.
this? Because I live in other countries, so it's not cold as here.
Where do you...
Brazil.
Oh, you're absolutely fine. So if you know that yeast thrives at 24 degrees, you just have to work around your hours. So instead of having it in the afternoon that is very hot, you probably will start the process early in the morning, and you can have a loaf in about 7 hours. So you can, from morning 6:30 till 7 hours after, you can bake it in the evening. So you're very advantageous. You've got an advantage there with the temperature. It's just that the process is a little bit more faster, let's say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions? No? You can come closer if you want to take any photos of the recipe to have a look. I've got it here on my workbook. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Yes, of course. Of course. Thank God. Oh, yes. I love pickles. Do you know that pickles, for instance, for me, I make some vegetables, like aubergines, like my nonna used to do, peppers, they're very good on the oil and vinegar. But when I have an imbalance, is either milk after help me settle down the acidity, for instance, or pickles are fantastic. Oh my God, as soon as I take a pickle, it just scalds, honestly, it's amazing, it's fascinating. Do you have your own starter?
Not yet. Whatever.
So if you take, right, take that one is cinnamon. It was just there to make a pumpkin, yes. So you can take a photo of this. It tells you how to start the starter. So you start 25 and 25, and then the recipe is on the next page. Let me see if I've got any copies of it. So again, just to show you, if you move it, look, it's literally fabulous. You can see it.
Actually, I should pack this up now.
Fancy.